Win big in 2023 with Team Sync from RotoBaller. Import your fantasy teams and sync your leagues. Get customized tools and tailored advice for your specific rosters and scoring settings, including live recommendations from the live draft assistant, free agent finder, and lineup optimizer. Sync an unlimited amount of NFL, MLB, NBA, and NHL fantasy teams from all of the major fantasy platforms. Get a discount for any premium pass using my code Knuckler. That's KNUCKLER, one who throws knuckleballs. Just visit rotoballer.com/radio and start rotoballing like a boss. And what's up, everybody? This is Brady Grove bringing you episode 95 of RotoBaller's official MMA podcast, Tap That, and we're looking forward to UFC Fight Night Charlotte, aka UFC on ABC, for this weekend. That card is going to be popping off on ESPN, the prelims, and then the main card on ABC. It's going to be happening early on Saturday, starting at 11:30 a.m., so I will be in the RotoBaller MMA Discord doing the weekly DFS and sports betting Q&A from 9:30 to 10:30 on Saturday morning. Bellator 296 is happening Friday. That's going to be in a few hours if you're listening to this, the morning that this comes out. Bellator 296, if you want to see my picks for that, follow me on Twitter at RotoBrady. That's where I post picks for events like Bellator, Invicta, 1FC, Ryzen, PFL, and more. Whew. Now, a lot of special interlude episodes coming up. I'm uploading those to YouTube steadily as we speak. There's a Tap That YouTube page. You can subscribe to that at Tap That MMA podcast on YouTube. Go like the Facebook page. Trying to expand, folks. Trying to expand. And like I said, a lot of interlude episodes coming up, one I'm particularly excited about. But we are talking about the UFC tonight. Just a quick note about UFC 288. Let's just go with the top three. Yan Xiaonan, wow. Not how I expected her to get that win over Jessica Andrade, but Jessica Andrade came in sloppy. Yan caught her and had enough to put her away. Regardless of what you think about that stoppage, it felt appropriate. It also felt early, but if you're Jessica Andrade, that's why you want to avoid looking unconscious at all costs. Either way, big win for Yan. In the co-main event, the injury aspect aside for Gilbert, I think that Belal, he got the biggest win of his career. And this is not just a win against a reputable name or a quality fighter. It's both. He is undeniable now at the top of the 170-pound division. Great for Belal. You keep being wrong to pick against him. And then in the main event, I thought Aljo beat Cejudo 3 rounds to 2, if not 4 to 1. All this talk about Cejudo getting robbed. I don't know what fight you're watching, but you're basing that off of all of these years of wanting Cejudo to come back. Now, judging fights can be subjective, sure. That was just a fight where it wasn't even like there were a few rounds that could have determined the fight up in the air. I thought it was decisively going to be a decision victory for Aljo. The question was, how many of a round deficit on the judges' scorecards did he win by, in my view? Now, let's get to this week's card. We have 12 fights. We were supposed to get Mackenzie Dern and Angela Hill on this card. That was rescheduled. But at women's bantamweight, you have Jessica Rose Clark against Tainara Lisboa, UFC newcomer, and definite international woman of mystery. I don't really have a good sound drop for that. I don't have a good sound drop for International Woman of Mystery. That's got to change. At 170 pounds, Gabe Green against Brian Battle. That is one I'm looking forward to watching. Yi Jian Kim versus Mandy Bohm, a women's flyweight matchup. Natan Levy and Pete Rodriguez facing off at lightweight. Cody Stamen and Douglas Silva de Andrade at bantamweight. Carl Williams is getting fed Chase Sherman on Saturday at 265 pounds. At 170 pounds, we have a look back to the early 2000s and 2010, mid to late 2000s, early 2010s. Matt Brown versus Court McGee at welterweight. Another welterweight fight. Tim Means and Alex Morono. That one could get grimy real quick, probably from the start. A light heavyweight matchup between Carlos Ulberg and Ihor Potieria. Another 170-pound matchup between Daniel D-Rod Rodriguez and Ian Machado Gary. The 11-0 Ian Gary. In the co-main event, what a crossroads between these two and what I think of these guys and what I've thought about them the last handful of years. Anthony Smith versus Johnny Walker. And in the heavyweight main event, Jairzinho Rozenstruik getting sacrificed to the young killer that everybody's looking to, rising through the heavyweight division, Jailton Almeida. Let's get cracking right into it. We're starting off with Jessica Rose Clark and Tainara Lisboa. Lisboa is she's actually the slight favorite. I'm seeing minus 115 to minus 105, as high as minus 120 to plus 100 for Jessica Rose Clark. Now, let's talk about Tainara Lisboa first. 32 years old. All of her wins have been inside the distance in her professional MMA career. Her first professional MMA fight was a loss to Norma Dumont in 2016 in Jungle Fight. Here's my great concern. And she's even won 5 of her last 6. But the opponent's records in each of those fights, 0-0, 0-0, 2-1. That was a loss by unanimous decision to Lorani Santos. 0-0, 0-1, and 1-4. Now, Jessica Rose Clark. Her last fight in the UFC was July of 2022. Her last win was October of 2021. She's lost 2 in a row. First round armbar submission losses to Julia Stoliarenko and Stephanie Egger. Her last win was a unanimous decision victory over Jocelyn Edwards, who she took down 5 times. She outstruck Sarah Alpar 76-12, got taken down 2 times to 1, and got a third-round knockout TKO against Alpar in September of 2020. Look, we all love Jessica Rose Clark. She's been in some great fights. She was, at times it felt like she was always on. And she was always in meaningful fights. But, I mean, really, there hasn't been a ton. It feels like Jessica Rose Clark, maybe because of her internet presence, feels like she's been around a lot more. Here's the thing. Jessica Rose Clark, with these last 2 the loss to Julia Stoliarenko gets me. I'll give you... And Stephanie Egger, those 2 in a row. Look, this is a fight that typically I would go with a Jessica Rose Clark as a slight underdog because I don't believe in the pedigree of the opponents that Lisboa has beaten. However, that seems to be something I'm consistently wrong on. I want to change my tune on. And it's a lot of these fighters that come out of Brazil. You know, you fight a lot of talented people who are starting off with records of 0-0, 0-1. And, you know, the finishes that she's had in her pro career, the fact that one of her losses is attributable to Norma Dumont, I think this is set up again to be a submission victory for Lisboa. So I think Lisboa probably wins this fight 55 times out of 100. So I like minus 115. Prop-wise, Lisboa by submission plus 650. Lisboa inside the distance is plus 215. Go ahead and roll with by submission. I think that offers better rewards for the likelihood. And Jessica Rose Clark by decision plus 190. I think that's the most likely single outcome of the entire fight. I think that's how Jessica Rose Clark wins all of the fights that she wins in this one out of 100. Next up, we got Brian Battle and Gabe Green. Brian Battle, the plus 110 underdog. Gabe Green, the minus 135 favorite. Brian Battle coming in as a replacement. Gabe Green was supposed to fight Jake Matthews. Start with Brian Battle because I love that guy. Now, had a great start. And counting the Ultimate Fighter, he really outclassed Gilbert Urbina. He really really beat down Tresean Gore, and that was a fight that people were real bullish on Gore going into, despite what Battle had proven throughout the Ultimate Fighter. He gets a really early knockout victory over Takashi Sato, August of 2022. Then he ran into a guy that could take him down 7 times, and, hit him hard, too. Outstruck him 43-3, took him down 7 times. That was Renat Fakhretdinov. Gabe Green will be at a 4-inch reach disadvantage in this one. Brian Battle's actually the year younger. These are 2 pretty young guys. And, you look at the opponents that Gabe Green has lost to. Daniel Rodriguez in his UFC debut, where he landed 127 strikes. Granted, he was hit 175 times. And Ian Gary, both fighters who had to beat him by unanimous decision, and he landed 90 strikes against Ian Gary. Against Johan Lanasi, he gets a second-round knockout TKO, even though he got taken down twice. Against Phil Rowe, he won by unanimous decision, got 2 knockdowns, 2 takedowns against Phil Rowe, outstruck him 70-42. Here's the thing, this is one, too, where I would love to say that I like Brian Battle as a slight underdog, but I think that Brian Battle is good. I think Brian Battle is really good. I don't know if he has this extra gear that I think Gabe Green still has. The opponents that he's lost to, and even though Renat is a very specialized kind of fighter to lose to, I think Gabe Green can dominate Brian Battle in equal ways on the feet as opposed to on the ground and just out volume strike Brian Battle. I think Brian Battle just lacks a little bit in volume and a little bit in power, and I think Gabe Green will be able to outpeak him in both of those things. And if it comes down to having to get a takedown or 2, I think that's something that they both might be able to do. Who knows? They're both well-rounded mixed martial artists, and Gabe Green a more well-rounded mixed martial artist than I think he gets credit for. Let's see. I think Gabe Green doesn't put him away, though. I think that this fight goes to the judges' scorecards. Fight goes to decisions, minus 140. I don't hate that at all. Green by decision, plus 220. And Battle by decision, plus 240. I like both of those because I think this is like a 55 fight out of 100 for Gabe Green, too. So, again, I think I like him slightly at minus 135. I like both of those props for them to go to decision. Interesting. That is a close fight, and I think very appropriately handicapped. Even taking into account the fact that Gabe Green was supposed to fight Jake Matthews at first. One sec. Oh, that was delicious. Yejeon Kim versus Mandy Bohm. Yejeon Kim is the minus 210 favorite. Mandy Bohm the plus 170 underdog. Oh, let's start with Mandy Bohm. She has lost both of her fights in the UFC, both by unanimous decision. Slightly different ways. She got tuned up by Ariane Lipski, 87-36 in the striking and knocked down twice. Then she loses to Victoria Leonardo, basically because she didn't outstrike her enough, and Victoria Leonardo landed 2 takedowns. Yejeon Kim will have a 1-inch reach advantage, and, oh, God. It's brutal for Yejeon Kim. I always feel like I get suckered into Yejeon Kim liking her as a slight underdog. Here, we have a fight where she's a considerable favorite. She has won 1 fight since October of 2019. She has lost 5 of her last 6. Granted, not to horrible competition, to good competition. The last fight was disappointing, though. Losses to Antonina Shevchenko, Alexa Grasso, Molly McCann, Priscilla Cochera, and Jocelyn Edwards. Now, she landed a ton of strikes in all those fights, but Molly McCann outlanded her and took her down. She outlanded Priscilla 170-102, but I remember that fight. That's another case where the statistics do not tell the full story.
But I'm not impressed by your performance. And I look forward to...
But then you take the split decision loss to Jocelyn Edwards, July 30th, 2022. Got outstruck 101-78, taken down once. Look, Jocelyn Edwards has that skill set at this tier to take people to the judges' scorecards and eke out weird decisions. Yu Jong Kim's last win was a second-round knockout over Nadia Kassem. Look, I think Mandy Bohm showed in her first two fights that she doesn't have the skill set to outfight Yu Jong Kim in the kind of fight that this is going to be. I think even if she gets Yu Jong Kim down to the ground, and which why would she's not going to? I don't think she has 0 takedowns so far in the UFC. Yu Jong Kim, granted, has been taken down a combined 5 times in her last 4 fights with no takedowns of her own. She gets taken down, but not a lot. And I think this is the kind of fight where maybe Yu Jong Kim lands 80 strikes, maybe Mandy Bohm lands 58, and somehow I think round by round and with the power that is in those respective shots, I think that this will end up being like a split decision for Kim. So it's hard to not... I think Yu Jong Kim gets this on the judges' scorecards like 60, 65 times out of 100. I don't want to touch a straight-up victor for this one. But I think so many of their fights have been going to the judges' scorecards. I haven't seen anything, Mandy Bohm has survived knockdowns before. I haven't seen anything to make me think that this won't go to the judges' scorecards. And the odds makers agree with me. Fight goes to decision minus 360. Kim by decision plus 102. Bohm by decision plus 215. Yeah, I'd rather go with Kim by decision plus 102. I just believe more in her ability to get this victory on the judges' scorecard. She's the kind of fight, I think Mandy Bohm is going to be just inside her handleable wheelhouse. And, in any Jocelyn Edwards decision, there's going to be people that thought that Jocelyn Edwards should have lost if she ended up the victor. Next up, we've got Natan Levy and Pete Rodriguez. Natan Levy, the minus 250 favorite. Pete Rodriguez, the plus 200 underdog. Let's start with Pete. Pete coming off of a first-round knockout victory over Mike Jackson. He got knocked out in the first round by Jack Della Maddalena, January of 2022. So overall, hard to complain with that year. Mike Jackson has done a lot of losing and had a no contest with CM Punk, lost to Mickey Gall. Maybe that victory doesn't mean a whole lot. But when your win is against Mike Jackson, your loss is to JDM. What do I do with that? He was born in 1996, by the way. Natan Lethal Levy, born in 1991. He's the winner of 3 of his last 4. 2 straight decision victories over Mike Breeden, where he landed 9 takedowns, was outstruck 104-92. And then a unanimous decision victory December of 2022 against Genaro Valdez. 6 takedowns, 67 strikes to 49 over Valdez. Look, this comes down to whether you think Pete Rodriguez knocks out Natan Levy. And I don't think that he does. I don't think Natan Levy knocks him out either. Why would he? I think he could beat him up in the way that he did Genaro Valdez and Mike Breeden throughout the course of this fight. I don't think that would be too much of a challenge for Natan Levy. I think he's better everywhere here. I just don't think that he ends it inside the distance. But let's see what the odds are on that. I think Natan Levy wins this fight like 75 times out of 100. Minus 250 isn't bad. Levy inside the distance is plus 100. Levy by decision is plus 340. Yeah, I agree. I'm changing my tune on that. I think that Levy... I think that Pete Rodriguez is going to prove an afterthought in this fight. In fact, I would say...
Don't do this. You cannot do this,
Don't do it, Pete. I think Natan Levy is going to get an impressive finish the more I think about this. And that's that's not necessarily because of what Natan Levy does. It's because of what Pete Rodriguez does, and that's worse. Levy inside the distance, plus 100. I think that is the best prop of the fight. Hit it. Finally hitting something. Pete Rodriguez, I'm not picking a prop for him. His best TKO knockout plus 400, but I don't think that is worth the reward that it offers. Next up, we got Cody Stamann and Douglas Silva de Andrade. Just want to try that out. Cody Stamann, minus 165 is the favorite. Douglas Silva de Andrade, the plus 135 underdog. Let's start off with Douglas. He lost his last fight, but it was to Said Nurmagomedov. And people tend to lose to that guy. For the most part, it was by unanimous decision. But 2 wins before that. One to Gaetano Perello by first-round knockout, and then a rear-naked choke victory over Sergey Morozov. That's solid. A loss to Lerone Murphy back in January of 2021, a win over Renan Barao in his past, a loss to Piotr Jan, a win over Marlon Chito Vera, a loss to Rob Font. This guy has fought some impressive guys. And then we're going to get to Cody Stamann. So the last 2 fights, at least, that he's won dating back to October of 2021 have been inside the distance. Cody Stamann will be at a 4-inch reach disadvantage. Remember what his arms look like. Has a win this year, January of 2023, unanimous decision victory over Luan Lacerda. Outstruck him 103-80 and got taken down once. I mean, Cody Stamann, in my memory, this guy was getting so many takedowns, and he was. He never strikes me as a guy that outstrikes Brian Caraway 95-59. He just has never seemed like that guy to me. So early on, it seemed like he was a heavy volume takedown guy. And maybe it's that he can't take these people down because Merab took him down 5 times. Syed beat him very early with a guillotine. Losses to Jimmy Rivera, Song Yadong, Aljamain Sterling, but wins over Alejandro Perez, Brian Kelleher. But that was June of 2020. He's coming off 2 straight wins, a first-round knockout over Eddie Wineland, and that unanimous decision over Luan Lacerda. Yeah, he gets finished. Cody Stamann has only been finished by Said Nurmagomedov and Aljamain Sterling in his UFC career. I think I just like the activity and the opponents that Douglas Silva de Andrade has fought just a little more. And, if he wants to make it all about striking, but what is... This is a really close fight. Man. The Sergey Morozov win means a lot more to me. I think Douglas Silva de Andrade can slow this fight down a little bit and not make it about all the strikes that Cody Stamann tries to rack up that sometimes can be not as meaningful. I don't even know a prop for this one. I think Douglas Silva de Andrade plus 135. I think this is a 50-50, maybe even 55 out of 100 for Douglas Silva de Andrade. Hit it. And prop-wise, I don't know. I think if I feel confident in any prop, it's Cody Stamann by decision plus 100. That is the best prop of that fight easily. I don't know, applause worthy. Next up, we got a heavyweight matchup between Carl Williams and Chase Sherman. Carl Williams is the minus 400 favorite. Chase Sherman, the plus 310 underdog. Let's start with Chase. I feel like I've talked about him at length so much over the last few years. He has been active. You got to give credit to the heavyweight generation. Some of these guys, at least display some level of activity when they had the opportunity. Now, Chase Sherman has won 2 fights since July of 2017. Losses in that time to Shamil Abdurakhimov, Justin Willis, Augusto Sakai, Andrei Arlovsky, Parker Porter, Jake Collier, Alexander Romanov, Waldo Cortez Acosta. Granted, he was either matched up against guys you would label prospects or guys that were just solid, hanging around the rankings kind of heavyweights. His only wins since, I guess his only 2 wins since May of 2020. Knockout victories over Ike Villanueva does not mean much to me, even in 2020. And Jared Vandera doesn't mean much to me either. Losses and getting easily outclassed in a lot of these fights against actual mixed martial artists, knocked out by people who are just in better shape to do this at this point in their career. and 2 wins against opponents that I do not care about if you're talking about hanging around against a prospect like Carl Williams, who has 2 unanimous decision victories so far, starting with the Contender Series over Jimmy Lawson, outstruck him 24-1 and took him down 3 times to 0. Jimmy Lawson.
But I'm not impressed by your performance, and I look forward to...
And then a unanimous decision victory in March of this year against Lucas Bresky, outstriking him 38-26, 8 takedowns to none, and 1 knockdown. Chase Sherman.
Don't do this. You cannot do this, you know?
Dude, this is a fight tailor-made for Carl Williams to come in and get another victory. Against a guy that people have heard of is what this fight is going to be. And Chase Sherman has 0 chance of stopping these takedowns from Carl Williams, getting up and doing anything about it throughout the course of 3 rounds. Was that all I was going to say on that? I think Carl Williams wins this fight 85 to 90 times out of 100. You have to believe that Chase Sherman gets a knockout very quickly when given the opportunity against Carl Williams, and I think Carl Williams has a pretty good chance of putting this away. I think Chase Sherman on the ground, once he realizes that he can't get up, will give up. So, Carl Williams, by decision, plus 200. Carl Williams inside the distance, minus 110. You hit that all day. Because I don't know if it's going to be an easy, arm triangle. I don't know if it's just going to be some sloppy choke that Chase Sherman gives up, or whether Chase Sherman is going to allow Carl Williams to pound on him continuously on the ground until until the ref stops the fight. But I think that this is where Carl Williams finally makes a statement to those who have said that while his talent and skills have been impressive, he wasn't able to put either of those 2 opponents away in those opportunities despite a dominant performance. I think this is where he gets that inside the distance, minus 110. Next up, we got a welterweight matchup between Matt Brown and Court McGee. What year is it? And Matt Brown, the plus 185 underdog. Court McGee, the minus 225 favorite. Let's talk about Matt Brown first. A legend of the sport. He's actually won 3 of his last 6. Dating back to November 2017, he's lost 3 of his last 4, with a win against Diego Lima, June of 2021, a second-round knockout. The 3 losses in that time to Miguel Beza, ouch, by second-round knockout. A unanimous decision loss to Carlos Condit. Then he had that win against Diego Lima, then a split decision loss to Brian Barberena over a year ago, March of 2022. He got outstruck 111 to 81. But he got 5 takedowns in that fight. My God, he has wins over Ben Saunders and Diego Sanchez dating back to 2017, both knockouts. This guy's fought, besides everybody I've already named, he's fought Donald Cerrone, Jake Ellenberger, Damian Maia, Tim Means, Johnny Hendricks, Robbie Lawler, Mike Swick, Stephen Thompson, Chris Lytle, Pete Sell, Don Young Kim. Matt Brown has been around for a very long time and been in some of the most legendary fights in the history of the sport. Court McGee, one of the legendary stories of how someone made it from rock bottom to fulfilling their dream as a professional MMA fighter. You got to check that out. And he's actually the winner of 2 of his last 3. Unanimous decision victories over Claudio Silva and Ramiz Brahimaj. He landed 8 combined takedowns in those 2 fights and a combined 91 strikes. That was in May of 2021 and January of 2022. He is coming off a first-round knockout loss to Jeremiah Wells June of last year. He's also fought the likes of Carlos Condit, Sean Brady, Diego Lima, Sean Strickland. Okay. What to say? I just think that Court McGee has a little bit left. It's hard to imagine this being a boring fight that Court McGee wins. I think that is what is most likely to prevail. It's just hard to imagine Matt Brown being in a fight that Court McGee wins. I I just don't think Matt Brown has enough left in the tank to combat what Court McGee still has left in the tank. So I think that this will be a kind of Court McGee-esque decision. I think Court wins this 65 times out of 70. I'm not touching a straight-up victor in this one. But McGee by decision plus 100, I like that. Hit it. Ow! As for Matt Brown, I don't know, man. Go TKO knockout plus 450. I think if you think that's what he has left in the tank and what he has over Court, I think that that's his clearest path to victory. And I think it's the one worth the reward of plus 450. Next up, we got Tim Means and Alex Morono. Tim Means, the plus 180 underdog. Alex Morono, the minus 225 favorite. Let's start with Alex Morono, the Great White, one of the most problematic nicknames in the entire sport. And this guy has won 4 of his last 5. Really started a nice run. In November 2020, he started to be really active. And he got that win over Reese McKee in Reese McKee's debut. Then he lost that fight to Anthony Pettis, but it was a good fight and put his name on a lot of more people's mouths and minds. Then he gets that win over Cowboy Cerrone, a win that meant less and less for every person that beat him and made a little bit of fame off of him. And I think Alex Morono is a true case of that there. But then rattles off 3 straight more victories. 2 against opponents I'm impressed that he beat. In David Zawada and Matthew Semelsberger, and got a unanimous decision victory over Mickey Gall. Landed 90, 90, and 106 strikes in that time. He is coming off a 3rd-round knockout loss to Santiago Ponzinibbio. I made money on that one, if you recall, December of 2022 at UFC 282. Tim Means will have a 3-inch reach advantage. He is the Dirty Bird. This is such a great matchup of grimy nicknames. I hope it's how the fight plays out. Now, Tim Means, winner of 3 of his last 5, but loser of 2 in a row. He has fought a lot of good people in the UFC. Belal Muhammad, Alex Oliveira, Matt Brown, Neil Magny, Jorge Masvidal. And just over this recent stretch, so he lost by 2nd-round submission to Danny Rodriguez February of 2020, but then rattled off 3 straight victories by decision over Loriana Staropoli, Mike Perry, and Nicholas Dalby. Then he got subbed in round 2 by Kevin Holland. Kevin Holland, I believe that was his debut at welterweight, and he looked really good in it. And then a split decision loss to Max Griffin, where I actually, if I recall correctly, I thought I disagreed with that decision. But Tim Means outstruck Griffin 47-42. They each landed 3 takedowns. I think this goes more along the lines of like Tim Means, Mike Perry. I think Tim Means displays better 3-round control of a fight. I think that the fight against Santiago Ponzinibbio is a great demonstrator of that against Alex Morono. I think Tim Means manages his time well throughout the course of a fight. And I think his length will help him to outstrike Alex Morono where this fight is going to take place. And if someone needs to get a takedown, it's going to be Tim Means to get the judges on his side before the scorecards come out. I think this ends up a little bit like Tim Means, Mike Perry. I think Alex Morono might have a little more success in the striking. He might even get a knockdown and win round 1. But I think that this is Tim Means' fight to win. So I think this is about 50-50, maybe even 55 out of 100 for Tim Means. So I love him at plus 180. Hit it. Ow! And as far as the outcome, I think this fight goes to the judges' scorecards as well. That's minus 125. And Tim Means by decision, plus 350. Morono by decision, plus 150. I am riding with both of those, but Means by decision, plus 350 is amazing. Hit it. Ow! Next up, we got a light heavyweight matchup between Carlos Ulberg and Ihor Potieria. Carlos Ulberg, the minus 450 favorite, and Ihor, I'm going to start calling him Ihor, the plus 325 underdog. It just sounds more appropriate. Ihor, winner of 2 of his last 3 fights. There's only 3 fights in the UFC since coming in via the Contender Series. 2 first-round knockout victories over Lucas Soldalski, September of 2021. He did lose by knockout to Nikolai Negumereanu in July of 2022, but his most recent victory, a first-round knockout, January of this year over Mauricio Shogun Hua. Whatever, man. Shogun was so old and battered and damaged. And so when you let Ihor, a young guy that can just throw a meat hammer at him, at Mauricio's head, that's what's going to happen. So it says a lot more about where Shogun was in his career, obviously, than where I think Ihor is or where he's going. Carlos Ulberg will have a 2-inch reach advantage. Winner of 4 of his 5 fights in the UFC. And this guy has wins over Bruno Oliveira by first-round knockout, a unanimous decision victory over Fabio Charant, a first-round knockout over Tefan Nchukwi, and a first-round knockout over Nikolai Negumereanu. His only loss is by round 2 knockout to Kennedy Nchekwu, where he actually landed 146 strikes before he got finished in that fight. And we've seen how good Kennedy has been of late and the path of development that he's been on. Look, if Nikolai Negumereanu knocks you out, Carlos Ulberg is going to knock you out too. I think that this fight doesn't go the distance. I think one of these guys is going to sleep. So if I have to believe in Ihor, if you go Ihor, you go Ihor by TKO knockout plus 700. It pretty much doubles the rewards you're getting. And I think that it's, by far his most likely path to victory. Ulberg by TKO knockout, minus 175. I love it. That's as much as I'll ever love a prop that offers that little reward, but hit it. Ow! And, to Carlos Ulberg, I would also say...
Nick, one comment, man. One comment.
No, don't be scared, homie. Come on.
Ihor Potieria, he beats Shogun at this point in his career. And, look, believe in the wins that you do have. I don't think Ihor's going to be a popular pick this week, but this is going to be a banger. They're going to be talking about Ihor's win over Shogun, but all of Ulberg's wins mean a lot more to me than Ihor's win over Shogun. So Ulberg by TKO knockout, I love it. I think he wins this fight 80 times out of 100. So I'm not touching a straight-up victory here, but I am going on their method of victory props. Next up, our last welterweight matchup of the evening. We got 3 fights left. Daniel D. Rodriguez. He is the plus 240 underdog to Ian Machado Gary, the minus 300 favorite. Let's start with D-Rod.
Break out the red panties.
Winner of 4 of his last 5, but loser of his last fight. Dating back to April of 2021, 3 decision victories. A knockout victory came against Preston Parsons, but the decisions over Mike Perry, Kevin Lee, and Li Zhangliang. The loss his last time out in November of 2022. I cannot believe that Daniel Rodriguez hasn't fought since November of 2022. It doesn't make any sense. I feel like he's on every card. But against Neil Magny, he lost by third round, Darce choke. Ian Gary. They have the same reach. Ian Gary is about 11 years younger in this fight. He has won all 4 of his fights in the UFC. 2 knockout victories. His first fight in the UFC against Jordan Williams and his last fight against Song Kenan, where he also outstruck him 127 to 55, but he got knocked down once in that fight. The 2 decision victories came against opponents that I'm impressed that he beat by decision and that I thought were going to be really tough tests because of how good they are with their hands and how good they are in the feet in general. Darian Weeks, he outstruck him 74 to 40, got taken down once. And against Gabe Green, outstruck him 116 to 90. They each had a takedown. He knocked Gabe Green down once. Look, Daniel Rodriguez has been doing really well. I appreciate that. But he hasn't been very active. Gary's had 3 fights in... He's just... The last, let's see. Danny Rodriguez has 2 fights since August of 2021. Ian Gary has 4. And against the likes of Gabe Green and Darian Weeks, those wins mean a lot for hanging around at this level. And, D-Rod, those wins against Kevin Lee and Yi Jiang, those were now close to a year and 2 years ago. I don't know if Ian Gary should be favored by this much. So I think Ian Gary wins this fight like 65, maybe even up to 75 times out of 100. But I can't hate D-Rod at plus 240. The question is the outcome of this one. D-Rod, I think if he wins this fight, he does it by decision. I don't know exactly what that fight looks like. I think it probably looks like the fight against Li Jiangliang. A slight advantage in the striking and a close decision. If they both can land tough shots, maybe an exchange of takedowns, but I don't know how likely that is from Danny Rodriguez. I think it's more likely from Ian Gary. Danny Rodriguez got taken down 5 times by Neil Magny. Gary inside the distance, Gary by TKO knockout plus 250. I think that is the best prop for him and the best prop of the fight. Rodriguez by decision plus 450, I think that is second best. Or it's the best for D-Rod, and the knockout TK is the best one for Gary. I think that's a more appropriate way to put it. Now on to the co-main event.
Break out the red panties.
And we've got a light heavyweight matchup between Anthony Smith and Johnny Walker. Johnny Walker is the slight favorite. Look at Johnny go. Minus 115. I should have downloaded a Here's Johnny sound drop for this episode. But anyway, that's impressive, and Anthony Smith is the minus 105 underdog. Let's start with Johnny. Winner of 2 in a row. 2 first-round finishes against Ian Kudalaba. Okay. That's good for hanging around the top 15. And then a first-round knockout over Paul Craig, who has looked less and less at home at light heavyweight, but still, I'm sure that I liked Paul Craig as a value against Johnny Walker. And that was quickly proven wrong. His last 2 losses, to Thiago Santos back in October of 2021 by unanimous decision, where he actually outstruck Thiago 48-44, and a first-round knockout loss to Jamal Hill, February of 2022. Now, granted, he's lost 4 of his last 7, dating back to Corey Anderson, Nikita Krylov. He does have the win over Ryan Spann, September of 2020, first-round knockout. Anthony Smith will be at a 6-inch reach disadvantage. He's won 3 of his last 4, dating back to November of 2020. Wins over Devin Clark by submission. Jimmy Crute by first-round knockout. That's the one where Jimmy Crute hurt his leg. Wasn't it? Jimmy Crute. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, that's the one that Jimmy Crute hurt his leg or foot during. It was unfortunate. It was a win for Anthony Smith. Then he beats Ryan Spann by first-round rear naked choke September of 2021. So he's only had 1 fight since then. It was a loss July of 2022 by second-round knockout to Magomed Ankalaev. He got knocked out by Magomed. Anthony Smith was born in 1988, and I always wanted to believe in Anthony Smith, even after he lost the title fight to Jones, and then he got battered by Glover and Alexander Rakic. People wanted to give up on this guy, and he still, proved in that 3-fight winning streak that he is of a certain level. And fighting John Jones messes with dudes. Regardless of how it goes, I think we've seen that historically. I'm a big proponent of that theory. But the knockout loss to Magomed and the upward trajectory of Johnny Walker, I think, says a lot. The fact that Johnny Walker is on this winning streak, I think this is the time to believe and buy stock in Johnny. I think he wins this fight 55 to 60 times out of 100. So I think he's a value at minus 115. Hit it. Ow! And as far as an outcome, I don't know. I think if you pick Anthony Smith, I don't think we necessarily know how it's going to go. And I think you just pick him minus 105. I think you avoid a prop with him. But Walker, by TKO knockout, plus 150, by far the best prop of the fight. Hit it. Ow! And now we are on to the main event of the evening.
Break out the red panties.
One more of that drop. If I have him on the board, I'm going to use them. It is a heavyweight matchup between Jairzinho Rozenstruik and Jailton Almeida. Almeida, the minus 500 favorite, and Jairzinho, the plus 360 underdog. This is one where I don't want to talk myself into going super bold here, and I don't think I'm going to. So, Jairzinho, loser of 3 of his last 5. He did win in his last fight. It was one where I was hoping Chris Daukaus still had some semblance of prospect left in him. It was quickly proven wrong against the gatekeeper Jairzinho by first-round knockout, but losses to Alexander Volkov, Curtis Blades, and Cyril Gane back to February of 2021. His 3 wins, that Overeem win, that kind of propelled him to the fight with Ngannou. And this guy, he's never fought for a title, which seems weird. It seems like he's just been always so close and just hanging around that spot. But after the Overeem win, which was in December of 2019, losses to Ngannou, Gane, Blades, Volkov, only wins against JDS, which means very little to me August of 2020 for the purposes of being around the top of the heavyweight division. Augusto Sakai by first-round knockout, which you can do against him if you have appropriate power. You can take shots, or you can miss big shots, and you're a better technical striker than him. It'll happen every time. And then Chris Daukaus, who did not have a lot left in the tank of the prospect status that I really hoped that he was going to have at one point. Remember, at one point I was convinced he was on a collision course with Tom Aspinall, and then he just fell so off. The Daukaus brothers, it seemed like they were here to take over, and they came here and did not do that. Jailton Almeida, born in 1991, 3 years younger than Jairzinho. He has won all 5 fights in the UFC, and it's all been since September of 2021. All have been inside the distance. None of his fights have made it to the 3rd round. A 2nd round rear naked choke victory over Nasruddin Nasruddinov in the Contender Series. A 1st round knockout over Danilo Marquez. A 1st round rear naked choke against Parker Porter, who landed 0 strikes. Jailton shut him out, 18 strikes to 0, 1 takedown to 0, and a submission. A 1st round rear naked choke against Anton Turkalij. And then his last time out, finally a really, a meaningful win for this class of opponent that he's going to be taking on Saturday, when he fought and defeated Shamil Abdurakhimov, who I think was even around, he might have still been like top 15 at that point. Shamil was, which seems crazy, but that's heavyweight, man. Finished all of his fights, man. Jairzinho, you get knocked out by Volkov. Blades doesn't put you away, and Gane doesn't either, but what does that mean? And Ngannou cleaned your clock in a crazy famous and viral fashion. I don't know how Jailton does it, but I do think Jailton does it inside the distance. I'm not going to sucker myself into going, what about Jairzinho plus 360? Look at who he's fought. No, don't do it. I think Jailton wins this fight 75 to 80 times out of 100. So I don't want to touch a straight-up victor here. It's hard. It's very hard for me to get up into the 90s and close to 100 in a fight in the UFC. It's rare that there is a matchup like that. And these numbers are juiced. So I just wouldn't touch a straight-up victor here. But I believe Jailton wins the vast majority of these fights. Jailton inside the distance. Minus 350. Use that to string a prop together. By TKO knockout, plus 175. By submission, minus 120. Go by submission. It's his easiest path. I think that even if he hurts Rozenstruik, and gets a knockdown, I still think that he ends up looking for the submission before he looks for the TKO. Jailton, by submission, minus 120. If you want to play around with Rozenstruik by TKO knockout, plus 475. No, that's not near enough, but that's where that prop is where it is, because it is going to be, if in the rare instance that Jairzinho wins this fight, it'll be by TKO knockout, and unfortunately, plus 475 does not tickle my fancy enough. Folks, that is it for the card of UFC Charlotte, also known as UFC on ABC4. That's going to be starting at 11:30 a.m. on ESPN, then transitioning to ABC on Saturday. That means I will be in the RotoBaller MMA Discord doing the weekly DFS/sports betting Q&A from 9:30 to 10:30 a.m. on Saturday. Look out for my XFL and USFL betting content. The XFL championship game is this weekend. Let's go, Renegades! Look out for interlude episodes coming out, some ones I'm really excited for. Check out Tap That MMA podcast on YouTube. I'm steadily uploading all the interlude episodes and putting episodes from now on onto the YouTube page. Go and like the Facebook page. Subscribe and like and comment everything that you can. Leave us a 5-star review on Spotify if you can. That'd be great. And follow me on Twitter at RotoBrady. That's where I make picks for other MMA organizations and boxing events. Thanks for listening. This has been episode 95 of RotoBallers' official MMA podcast. Tap that, and this has been RotoBrady Grove. Have yourselves a good weekend and peace.
Break out the red panties.